On with part 3 of MayaRockStrars Series 3. So we're going to go back into animation. So we're working on the animation of a bouncing ball. So far all we've done is create the plane, and we've created the ball by just creating a NURB sphere and a NURBS plane, and then we created a center point. We moved the center point down to close to the bottom here so that we can transform that up and down. So if you missed the last video and you don't know how to do that, just go right back to it. But what we want to do is kind of animate. We're going to create a very simple animation. So I'm going to move this ball all the way over to the back of the plane here. And so I want it to transform over here from left to right. Now, I'm not going to make a huge animation for this, so I want to have a certain number of keyframes here. So let's go over the keyframe editing here. So right now I have my timeline set up to go from 1 to 120. Really, ideally, I mean, if I had like let's say I had it at 30 frames a second, right? So we're gonna go. If you click on the right side here, you'll see that I'm set at 24 frames a second, which is a pretty good standard. I'm gonna want to make this 30 frames a second. So let's go down here. So I can scroll down here and go up to the 30 frames a second. So I have so keeping that in mind. So keep in mind that 30 frames a second, 150 frames is about a 5-second animation. So that's probably more than I need. That's more than enough to make an animation of this ball. So what I want to do is I want to animate the ball from the left side of the screen or from the left of that plane to the right side. So, you can do it in the side view, but right now I'm just going to do it in this view, first of all, here. So I'm going to go back to the first frame. Now notice I have a really odd frame number here. So it's like 1.25. So really I want to start at frame 1. And the same thing with the in-out. So the in-out, you'll notice there's a timeline here. It shows you kind of your in and out. This is your viewable area of your animation. We'll get into this a little bit later. But, you want to have an overall viewable area. So you notice my entire animation here, the full length of it would be 250 if I wanted to fully utilize the full time frame, which I don't necessarily need to do. But I only want to view, say, about 150 frames of that. So let me go down back to 150. So you want to keep these. You don't want these at fractional numbers. You want to keep these at whole numbers here. So I'll keep my guy here on frame 1, and we're gonna create our first animation. So to do that, I want to set a keyframe here on the first frame, and I want to be on frame 1. So I'll go ahead and hit the S key. And what the S key does is it sets a keyframe. So you notice I set a keyframe there. And then I'm going to go drag the timeline down to frame 150. Now, make sure you do this. Make sure you drag the timeline across, because otherwise you won't be setting a second keyframe. So to create an animation, you need at least 2 keyframes. And so now I'm going to go and drag this guy across here just on the x-axis. So just going across the x-axis there. So I grabbed that little widget and I went down, and it doesn't have to be the full length of the thing, right? I can make it kind of not go all the way to the edge, and I'll hit the set keyframe there. So now I have an animation. If I scrub my timeline here and just drag, you'll see the animation happens. So I set up what's a keyframe is. A keyframe is a specific point that you want to make a frame at, and then a later frame, so that the computer interpolates those frames. So if I go ahead and play this, you'll see that it kind of starts out fast and moves slow. Now you might have a situation where you're seeing it play very fast. So if your computer has a really powerful graphics card, or you don't have this set, if you don't have this window set here, and the way I pulled that up is I clicked on this little the little animated guy here in the bottom corner. Click on that, and so that's my animated preferences. So we want to make sure that our frame rate is on 30 frames per second, and also that our play rate is also 30 frames per second. So if your guy is like moving really fast, like if the animation is just like jumping really quickly from left to right, it's because it's trying to process all the frames as quickly as possible, rather than trying to play them at a specific frame rate. So make sure you you set that. So again, you set that here, and you say not only 30 frames per second up here, but also on the playback, you want to make sure it's 30 frames per second times 1.